for Paranormal, PPF Investigations, and the Unseen Paranormal Podcast present the Tennessee Haunts and Legends Expo, coming October 21st, 2023 to the Fairgrounds, Nashville, in Nashville, Tennessee, featuring over 80 vendors, paranormal teams, and historic locations, as well as a full schedule of speakers with topics including Bigfoot, the Bell Witch, paranormal investigations, and more. A majority of the proceeds will benefit a local historic location and a local charity. For more information and how to be a vendor, please visit tnhauntsandlegendsexpo.com. Tickets on sale soon.
Welcome everyone to Life Beyond 6 Feet. I'm Damien from RKB Paranormal, and this week I have Mr. Jason Fife, the co-founder of Lost Souls Paranormal Detectives. I kind of jumbled that up. Anyway, Jason, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Like I said, I was kind of scrambling for a guest, and I reached out to my good friend Kristen Amanda, and she recommended you, and she's like, I think you guys will have a lot to talk about because you have a lot of similar stories. And I was like, well, let's see what happens. So you're based out of Knoxville, correct?
Yes, I am.
That's awesome. So kind of tell me how your journey into the world of the paranormal kind of began.
I guess, the best thing I can do is kind of go backwards a little bit. Craig Hoffner and I founded Lost Souls Paranormal Detectives in I can't think of the month exactly, but I know it was 2007.
Okay.
So up until that point, I was always curious, and I always had that I felt that were gifts. But I'd never really started pursuing them until I got into my early 20s.
Okay.
Just because my religious background was I grew up Southern Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
So being in that, it's a very strict type, religion. I hate to say that, but that's, kind of what it is. And growing up with that, and then when I got out on my own and started, reading, and because kind of, then there wasn't the internet. So it was a little more difficult because you sort of had to know, know people or know the bookstores to go to or anything like that to get your information.
Right.
But I started reading magazines and books and all types of religion because I always felt that there was something more, out there. It wasn't just we're born, we live our lives, we die, that's it.
Right.
There's nothing else. So I just started studying everything and then learning as much as I could from different people. And I talked to a lot of religious leaders here in Knoxville, a lot of different churches and stuff. Kind of as many as would actually speak with me, I should say.
Right.
Because at that time they all thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't really talked about as much as it is like more mainstream today. But I just gathered all the information up, and then to lead it to 2007, as Craig and I were standing in his driveway, and it was pretty much just, we were out there talking, and he had interest. He just got, I guess 6 months to a year earlier, just got retired from the Navy. So, he was doing stuff, and we just kind of clicked, and, we're like, hey, let's go do this. Let's really see what this is all about.
Right.
And that's just how it started, and we've been doing it ever since. So we're heading into our 16th year.
That's amazing. And kind of like everybody I've talked to, that it always seems like religion has been more or less kind of the Kickstarter in a way, because like you're interested in it, but due to your religious background, it's kind of taboo and you can't really talk about it.
Excuse me.
You're good. And so I think pretty much everybody I've talked to, that's kind of how they got their start. They had this interest when they were younger, but because of whatever the religion is, whether it's Christian or Baptist or whatever, they're like, I can't really dive into this. So when they get into adulthood, they're like, I'm still fascinated by this. I want to see what this is really about. So as a young child and a teenager and stuff, where you're kind of learning a little bit about this stuff, did you have any kind of experiences that kind of got you interested in it, or was it just kind of always there?
It was it was always there to a point. I mean, I can remember when I was young, um, seeing things and knowing things I wasn't really supposed to know.
Hmm.
Like, you know how when you're a kid and you have like family over or friends or whatever, and you're not allowed kind of like in the family room at that time by the
Right.
adults in there,
Yeah.
you know, and I didn't realize it, until I got older, but I would, walk in there and be like, hey, what's happening, everybody? But I could feel every emotion in the room, you
Right.
know, and it was weird because I was like 6 or 7, and I'm like, I don't know what all this is,
Right.
sadness, happiness, whatever. And everything just kind of started growing from there. Even through my teenage years and after I graduated high school, it was different. Like even in high school, I didn't even know at the time that I had a gift. But when you're surrounded by 1,000 people every day,
Hmm.
it's really hard because you don't understand what's going on or what's happening.
Right.
Because you're getting all these emotions and feelings from everybody else walking in the halls and stuff like this that
Hmm.
you don't realize that you think it's something that was wrong with you,
Right.
but you don't. It's not. It's that it's the thing of you feel emotion and you do the best you can to bottle it up to some extent, and
Hmm.
then you have to figure out a way to
Right.
release it.
Right. Now you mentioned Craig. He's your co-founder, correct?
Yes.
Now
Yeah.
how do you guys know each other?
We actually, my ex-wife, that's her brother. So, or one of her brothers. So
Okay.
when we had gotten married at the time, he was overseas.
Okay.
So he when he retired, then me and him just hit it off, and it was just go. It was basically like, hey, anybody's got any supposedly haunted stuff, or do you know anybody
Right.
that's got it? And it was we just started from there.
Right. Now, so when you started your team, was it just you two, or did you have like some other people in mind that you invited to join, or was it just you two for a while?
It's always been us two.
Just y'all two, huh? Oh, well, that's
Yeah,
hey.
we've it's kind of weird, but we've thought about bringing people in or bringing people on, but it's a lot more challenging, I guess, because we're not necessarily set in our ways now, but it's more of we love the high tech gear and we love doing all that,
Hmm.
but we also like going back. We love the basics,
Right.
and that's the thing that we try to do. And a lot of people aren't interested in that anymore.
Right.
They're not interested in the string with the coke cans hanging off of it, or
Right.
they're not interested in that kind of stuff because it's not fascinating and popular anymore.
Uh, I'll see. I'm interested in any of it. If it gets some kind of response and I can't explain it, I'm interested in it. So now with it just being you two guys, are you guys like open? Do you guys ever work with other teams, or is it just strictly always you two?
No, we're always open to work with other teams. I mean, it's a thing. We've worked with teams pretty much all over the United States.
Oh
We've worked
wow.
with some teams in England.
Oh wow.
We've worked with several teams in Scotland. I mean, we've worked all over the place, but of course, it's been virtually, so
Right.
it's a little different. But any help is better than no help, I guess.
Right. Right. So so you said you started your team in roughly 2007. So when did you actually decide, okay, you know what, I want to kind of do this thing? Like, was it earlier than that, or you were just sitting around one day and like, you know what, I'm going to call Craig up and see if he wants to start a team with me?
It was honestly, and I'll give this the credit, but Paranormal State had just came on TV,
Hmm.
like it just came on like A&E, I believe,
Right.
and me and Craig had talked about doing some of this before because he's ex-military, and he's like the skeptic of the group,
Right.
so he's very gung-ho, and this can't happen because of this and da 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 da. So when I knew this is what I wanted to do, is kind of like when we made that decision in like his driveway. It
Right.
was kind of weird because everything had kind of led up to that moment. And when that happened, I was like, okay, I actually have someone that is not only my best friend and cool to hang out with and stuff. It's also he gets it. He gets it why I get crazy sometimes.
Right.
And nobody else understands me. Like, we're on an investigation or whatever. And, he's always like, okay, you just tell us what we need to do and we'll do
Right.
it, or vice versa. He'll be the one, to be like, okay, this is what I feel, this is what we're going to do, and this is, how we're going to do it. So it just worked out well between us. And I think that was a realization, almost 16 years ago, that that's really what I wanted to do.
Right. So Lost Souls Paranormal Detectives. How did you come up with that name?
It was the same night exactly. Um, we were standing there and we were going back with names and this and that, and I think Craig was even. He said, "I'm just going to Google and see, if there's anything in Tennessee,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever." And he Googled it and nothing came up. And then he was like, "Let me Google, for the United States," and then nothing had come up. And he was like, "There we go, that's it.
Right.
That's what we're going to use." And I was like, "That's perfect,"
Right.
But we had talked about, everybody's searching for the lost soul.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's looking for that one piece of evidence, or that
Right.
one thing to justify the scientific and the spiritualism part of it.
Right.
And then we just put the paranormal in there and then added detectives on it because we're always looking for that one clue.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's that one, and I get excited when I say it because it's that one little thing that can change everything.
Right. And that's how it is for like any investigation. You just need that one piece, and it's a perfect night.
Yep,
So,
it is. Yep.
all right, so you started the team with your best friend. You've got a name.
Right.
When was your first actual investigation? Once you got this thing going.
We and all this it still cracks me up to this day, talking about this because we basically bought a wired DVR system. So it had the 4 cameras
Mm-hmm.
and the box. We bought that. We bought a couple of, I want to say, RCA digital recorders,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. And I'd already had a camera,
Right.
so and that was it. That's what we used. So it was like 2 weeks after we decided we were going to do it, we had our first case,
And where was that at?
and that was actually it's in Northeast Knoxville. Um, it was a lady I had worked with at the time that there was some stuff going on in her house that
Okay.
was kosher, but her husband just blew it off. He didn't
Right.
think nothing was happening. So
Right.
that was probably one of our most memorable cases, and we learned a lot from that.
Right. And you started out with way more equipment than a lot of teams do when they first get started. Like our very first investigation before we actually decided to start our team, we had a K2 meter and a digital recorder, and that was it.
Right.
And we roamed around Brushy Mountain for 7 hours with just that. So,
Probably the most fun you've had in a while, right? I
oh,
mean,
Brushy
it was.
Mountain was amazing. I could have walked in there with absolutely nothing. I still would have had a blast.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Hey, that is a good place to go if you get the opportunity. I had the opportunity to do a night tour there.
hmm
It was really, really nice. I was surprised.
yeah, and it's been one of our most active locations we've been to. And like I said, even though we didn't really have anything to document it, we still have all those personal experiences, of stuff being thrown at us and all
Exactly.
this other stuff. So and that's what's amazing about the paranormal. Even if you don't always capture something, you still have those personal experiences you can talk about, and it gets you excited, even though you have nothing to show you. Like, I know this happened.
Right.
And so what's some of the locations that you guys have investigated? I know you just mentioned Brushy. What's some other notable places you guys have checked out?
We've been to Old South Pittsburgh Hospital several times.
Right.
We were actually lucky enough to be one of the last few teams to go in there before they did the renovations.
Okay.
When it was owned by someone else,
hmm
we had went in there, and then it was, I think, 4 or 5 months after that they shut it down,
Okay.
um, and then someone else bought it. But investigating out there is really cool. It's fun, but it's also a very good learning facility
Right.
to try it. I've been there. Another good place is the Greenback Castle. I talk about that a lot too. It's out in Greenback, Tennessee. The guy that built it basically built it because God told him to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's a very random mix, and it's kind of back in the woods a little bit. So I wouldn't recommend going there at night unless you have his permission.
Right.
Going there in the day is pretty good. I'm trying to think because it's been, of course, brushy. We've been there. That's the only places we've been to here in the past, I guess, year or so. The most current. We do a
Right.
lot of residential and
Uh-huh.
commercial properties, but not a lot of the hot spots
Right.
where people go.
Right. So how do you approach the personal residences? Because like our team is kind of we've been around for almost 3 years and we're still kind of up in the air about it because you have to, it's a lot of give and take when it comes to a personal residence, and we want to help people, but at the same time it's like if nothing happens while we're there,
Right.
are these people going to think we're full of it, or they're going to think they're crazy? It's like, so how do you guys approach that, especially like when nothing happens when you're there?
It's it's always the drawback, because it's never like you see on TV when you
Right.
go to a residential, and I really think that's a lot of people have that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have that in their mind. Like as soon as I walk in the front door, I'm gonna get there's gonna be orbs, and I'm gonna
Right.
get EVPs, and my camera card's gonna be full because I've got all this stuff. But when you have those houses, and it's really hard to explain to the client too, because you kind of have to ask yourself at that point, if you go and set up and you don't get anything, is the mental capability of the client,
Mm-hmm.
what is it like, what
Right.
what what duress or what stuff are they going through in their personal life,
Mm-hmm.
to possibly either manifest something that is not necessarily there at all, that their
Right.
brain is doing, or do they really have something in their house.
Right.
And it's just that good at hiding that,
Yeah.
it won't show itself except to them.
Right. So it's very touchy when it comes to personal residences. Like I said, we've done like my grandmother's house, but she's at like, I know there's stuff here and we experience stuff there. Even like when we're just sitting around my granny's house just talking and stuff, just visiting during the day. But
Yeah.
we had a lot of people when we first started reach out, and I've mentioned this before on past episodes, but we had some of the stuff they were explaining to us. I'm just like, I don't think you need to be calling an upstart paranormal team. I think you should be contacting your local church, because if this stuff is really happening, I was like, there's no way we can handle this.
Right.
So have you ever had any cases like that where it's just like, you know, my chairs are being thrown across the house and this and that, and you've had to contact churches and stuff to kind of help you guys out?
Yeah, I mean, we've had several cases where I've tried to get in touch with whatever, and we try to do it with the client. That way, we're like, okay, what would you prefer?
Right.
What spiritual or religious? You want a priest, you want a pastor, you want um, a priestess. I mean, it really just depends. But we've had a couple that have just escalated, and then the priest shows up, and then it's just like, okay, what's happening?
Right.
Nothing happened, like
Right.
nothing. And you're like, I'm sorry you had to drive an hour and a half away.
Right.
This, and the client homeowner's trying to explain everything to him, and this and this, and we're trying to show him evidence, or and it's just one of those deals. But it's hard sometimes
Right.
because you're not only doing what you feel is right, but you're also involving another human being into
Hmm.
this, and it's spiritual, but you're not sure, and
Right.
it's all, especially starting out. That was our stuff. It was always like, and now it's like we pick up the phone and we're like, yeah, here's the address.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
here it is, because it's just kind of that learning thing, I guess, over the years. The more you cases you're on, and the more stuff you do, it just kind of becomes easier.
Right. Now, earlier you mentioned you kind of discovered these gifts you had kind of growing up. So how do you incorporate that into your investigations?
A lot of it is we have a 30 questionnaire.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go out to client's house, this is my method. The way I do it is we go out to their house or meet them somewhere, whatever they prefer, and we're just honest with them. And I think that hurts us sometimes because the questions that we have on the questionnaire are very personable, or
Mm-hmm.
they're personable, but they're very personal.
Right.
And are you on medication? What kind of medication? Are you taking crazy pills? You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
Right.
because have you had episodes? Are you manic? Is anybody in the house that? And a lot of people will look at us like we're crazy
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, well, who are you to be asking us these questions? We've had that happen.
Right.
And we're like, we're just trying to figure this out because we know we're crazy, but but we're just trying to make sure you're all on the level. But
Right.
but that's a thing. And from talking to them and seeing their reactions, that's how I already know if there's stuff going on or not.
Right.
Because I get the feeling from them, and it's hard sometimes to be on point or to say something when they're lying to you.
Right.
And that I think is the hardest thing to do.
Right.
Is in your heart and your soul that you're talking to a client and it's just they're just bullshitting you. This,
Right.
and it's hard not to just come out and say, hey, look, I know you're lying.
Right.
But necessarily you can't. That's
Yeah.
always have a hard time.
Right. So you mentioned earlier you do like a lot of the high tech equipment. So what's some of the more high tech stuff you guys like to use?
Right now, I really like the laser grid. I know that's
Mm-hmm.
not like super high tech,
Right.
but we used it quite a bit when we were at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, and it was amazing because 10, 12 years ago we didn't have that. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
anything to use, and it was really cool because we got a few things from the video that we did the laser grid, and we even put balloons and stuff out,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really cool to see this stuff happen.
Right.
And I don't think we would have seen it if we didn't have the grid
Right.
to actually help us.
Right. So you like the laser grid? Are you a big fan of the REM pod?
I am
Right.
it's pretty cool.
Right.
I like it. I don't It's kind of hard because I've always been that energy person.
Mm-hmm.
So I can already tell when I meet somebody if it's you know if it's good. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
if it's on point and all that. So that's a thing that with the electronics and stuff, it's almost like sometimes I get it before it happens.
Right.
And then that's weird, but it just does it. And I don't know how. I kind of little deja vu
Mm-hmm.
sessions,
Right.
and that's something. But I do like the Gonsfeld experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's probably one of my favorite ones. Except not we use a mask, like a
Right.
sleep mask instead
Mm-hmm.
of the ping pong balls.
Right.
But that's probably one of my favorite ones because you can get some really good responses and stuff out of that.
Right. So when you're doing that experiment, how often do you find that like whatever's being asked and what's being answered actually correlates? Is it like 50-50, 60-40? Because sometimes we'll do it and nothing will make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And other times you're just like, I'm sitting there having a full blown conversation with somebody that's not even here. So how do you guys um what's the way I'm trying to explain it? What's your I don't really know how I'm trying to explain it.
I
Do you,
understand
do you
what you're
have a
saying.
lot do you have a lot of luck with it?
I would say every time out of the past, let's say 5 times we've used it,
Hmm.
um, 3 times we've got really, really good responses, um, almost on key to what what's happening.
Right.
Uh, they were saying stuff and it was coming up on the screen, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, this ain't, and it might be one word out of 12,
Right.
but we're actually getting that. So we try not to get too hyped when we get them, but we've been on some cases where it's just constant,
Right.
and it's almost freaky when that happens.
Right. And I think probably the craziest thing, in my opinion, is when it says your name.
Yes.
And it's just like, okay, especially when it's a location you've been to before, and they're like, okay, they remember me being here last time. So that's pretty wild. And you also mentioned you do a lot of like old school techniques. So what's some of like the kind of older school stuff you like to do?
And I say, and I don't, I'm kind of curious. So when people watch this, I want them to hit me up, and I want to see if they'll actually do it when they go out and investigate. So,
Right.
our my I can't speak for Craig on this because he has different ones,
Mm-hmm.
but my favorite is the baby powder and the glass. That's always been my favorite, and for some reason, it seems to work really well.
Right.
Uh, and that I've always used that.
Right.
So it's very simplistic, and I was looking at the fact that you can use baby powder or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and see if it happens, see if it doesn't. And
Right.
waiting to for the see the evidence on that camera. Holy crap!
Mm-hmm.
You want to see if it's moved or not.
Right. Well, we have an investigation coming up here in about a week, and if I remember, I'm going to try that.
Cool.
Like I said, I'm open to anything. So, I mean, we've got to a point where we have just a bell we hang up and just we let it sit there and just to see if we hear it ding at any point during the night. So
That's always fun because do y'all forget about it sometimes and it just dings and you're like,
yeah,
oh, what happened?
I'm
Or
like, what
somebody
was
hits it.
right? Yeah. So like I said, we'll just pick a random spot and just hang it up. And like you said, there'll be times we'll just completely forgot we hung it up. And yeah. So I'm gonna ask you something that I've been asked before when I've done interviews where I'm being interviewed for a podcast.
Okay.
Do you ever get scared?
I do. Sometimes. I think it's more of
Mm-hmm.
the human fear.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I do. I do get sort of, freaked out,
Mm-hmm.
but that's when you kind of got to compose yourself, and
Right.
because you're going there to do hopefully a service for someone
Mm-hmm.
and to help them. So that tries to out for me. I try to outweigh that more than my own, being
Right.
scared or like that because sometimes it can get bad.
Right. And I've heard people, they'll be asked that, they'll say no, that nothing scares me. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I was thinking, there's no possible way, whether you're in a house or at an old hospital, you don't get at least a little spooked out at
Mm-mm.
some point. There's just no way.
No, no. I'll go ahead and even say this too, because even when, and I know this is gonna be bad, people are gonna start laughing, but even when I play Call of Duty and I'm not like really paying attention or whatever, and I'm
Hmm.
like running or doing what, and somebody comes up and just shoots me, I'll jump, I'll
Right.
jump out of my skin. So
Right.
yeah, so if I do it with that, yeah, we go somewhere like location or something.
Right.
Hmm. Yeah, I get a little on the edge.
So what's some of the craziest things you've experienced during an investigation, whether it's a personal or commercial, residential, wherever? What's one of the craziest stories you have to tell?
I think so far that I've got quite a few, but I think the one that actually I think about the most, we were at the Greenback Castle, and the guy that owns it was even at that time, it's been probably 10 years ago. I haven't been back since, and I told Craig, I said the only way I'm going is that if a TV crew's with us, and because this place is freaky to no end. Um, but I saw it was dark, and me and Craig were walking around. We had some people with us, because they like amateurs that wanted to do it and stuff.
Hmm.
So we're and the owner leaves, and he says, "I won't come back. I'll be back in the morning." It's okay. So me and Craig are like, make sure everybody's okay and everybody, kind of having a good time and stuff, and asking or answering questions, asking questions. We walk around a corner and there's no lights out there, so it's completely pitch black.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked around the corner and he's standing there, and I looked over at Craig and I was like, Craig, I about pissed myself, and he looked at us and it was this weird, like strange kind of head kind of tilted, and stuff. And he was like, oh, I didn't mean to scare you guys. I was just wanting to check on everybody. Now, a couple hours earlier, he was like, I'm leaving y'all. I'm coming home. I'm not going to bother you. So we thought that was really strange. That was just like off kilter. About 30 minutes after that, he finds us again and we're talking to him, and his eyes changed. They went from human to cat to black. And I'd never seen that before in my life. And Craig was to my right at that time. And I kind of looked at him and he kind of looked at me. And it was almost like you could see yourself in his eyes, in the blackness. And then they just fluttered and then flipped back to human. And when that happened, I didn't really know what to do because that's never happened before.
Right.
So I'd read about it, I'd seen it in movies, and all this other stuff, but it just flipped. And I started backing up and stuff. We're like, all right, we're gonna start packing up and head out and everything. And we got everybody together and we left. But the problem with that is the land, I believe, has attachments to it and possibly the stuff that's built. So one of the vehicles that we were driving, it actually the transmission locked.
Oh.
So yeah, so it was like that happened. Then we had to call a tow truck. It was just after we saw him and his eyes changed, random stuff started happening.
Wow.
And no cell phone service. Then you'd have cell phone service, and their battery was dead. I mean, it was just craziness. So up to date, that's probably one of my best like experiences I've ever had out at an investigation.
Now, does he recall any of that, or was he like, no, I was at home this whole time?
It was weird. The gentleman that owns it's very, I guess I could say eccentric or possibly eclectic. Um, he's very. I don't really have to know the words for it, but he's a really nice guy, but will flip, on a dime and just kind of, hey, did you see this? Hey, come over here. Hey, walk over here. And I think there might be some mental stuff going on,
Right.
with that. But as we were there, he was just acting strange and stuff, and especially when he came back the second time, and it was just a really weird atmosphere.
Oh man.
When that started happening. And then after that, we didn't have contact and much with him anymore. But he has people that come from all over the world to see this.
Right.
So I'm not really sure. I know there's stuff there, but the severity of it is there's some pretty evil stuff there too that I feel.
Oh man. And I think I've heard of that place. Isn't it like covered in like a lot of graffiti and stuff?
Yeah, it has there's one room that's full of nothing but McDonald's figures, like from Happy Meals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's like a church room. There's one room with dolls in it, and a concrete bed. And I'm talking about a life size bed. I'm not talking like, and this place is elaborate to be like it's basically like half of a castle and it has the turrets.
Right.
And then he's added stuff on there, but it's like probably one of the places locally that I've been to that is crazy. Like if you get a chance and you go sit in the daytime, I would definitely do it.
Right.
Um,
I've heard a lot of things about that place. So yeah, it's definitely on the list, and it's not that far away either. So speaking of lists, what's some places on your guys' list that you eventually want to hit up?
I think, and we being doing this for so long, me and Craig go back and forth a lot. But I think over the years we've narrowed it down to I think Bobby Mackey's. I think that's one of one of our tied for number one spots to go to. I should
Right.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's high on my co-founder's list too. It's one because because my wife's part of our team too, and she's like, "That's one that I want to sit out. You guys can go." She goes, "But that one I'm going to have to bow out on." So,
Yeah, that's I don't know. It's always been one of my things to go. I just want to see if it's truly
right,
as, as haunted as they say it is.
right. That's kind of why I want to go because they have like a sign when you walk in, pretty much saying they're not responsible for anything, and I'm like, no, is it really that bad here? So yeah, that's one of the places I've always wanted to go to as well. So,
Yeah,
so like, what's the future look like for you guys? You going to continue doing this as long as you can?
we are. I mean, it's a thing of I think longevity in this. I think we're going to do really well. I mean, we've done it this long, and I always tell people that we're Knoxville's underground, you know, paranormal people
Right.
because we don't. I don't know how to say this without saying it, but we never we're not out here showcasing, and we're not
Mhm.
this and that, and it's more of a just call us, if we can't do it, whatever, we definitely know somebody that can,
Right.
and I think just over meeting people and making those connections and stuff that that helps. So yeah, I look for us to be around, at least until our human selves are non-functionable,
Right.
you know.
All right. So you talked about probably your craziest personal experience. So what's like probably your best piece of evidence you've actually captured?
I think we were probably 5 or 6 years in, and we had a residence, and this one was pretty cool. Same scenario, and I hate to say this, but this seems to be a ever well since before COVID, I should say it was a thing. But the wife always was a firm believer, and the husband
Hmm.
didn't believe at all. Right?
Right.
Like that was always our thing. Was we had the occasional husband that would actually see a chair turn over and like freak out,
Right.
but before that, it was always kind of like it's what it seemed. But we were filming at an older house, and I don't know. It's called the Asheville Highway Bridge here, but it was burned down 6 to 8 times by the Union and Confederate soldiers during
Oh,
the
wow.
Civil War. So this house was probably 2.5, 3 miles from that. Um, so you had the lake, and then you had the bridge, all this stuff happening, and we actually caught um, part of I wouldn't say a full body apparition, but it was half of that and half of an orb. It
Hmm.
was very, very strange. Like it was almost trying to morph itself. The orb was, but then it just like disappeared back into an orb and then left. It
Hmm.
was really strange. But we had did this, and this is one of my favorites because Craig he was killing himself trying to debunk this. With there was windows and glass, and and he even got in his car and drove halfway down the block and drove up and down 4 or 5 times, and sat at the stop sign. And we talk about this case all the time, but it was just one of those things that he could not debunk anything in this house. There was nothing that he could debunk that wasn't, it wasn't like spiritual.
Right.
It was crazy, and I think that was probably one of my favorite investigations because it
Right.
had a little bit of history. Plus, it had it had active spirits in there, which was really cool.
Right. And when you can't debunk something, that makes it even absolutely 100% more compelling. Because
It
that's
does.
because that's kind of the approach, everybody on my team kind of takes. Like we are 100% believers, but at the
Right,
same time, we know everything isn't paranormal. So if something happens, once we kind of calm down after seeing it, we're like, okay, well, how did this actually happen?
right.
So, like probably the craziest thing we've captured was at the historic Scott County Jail. Uh,
Okay.
we captured a picture actually flying off the wall and like flipping in midair.
Oh wow.
And so, when that happened, we spent probably 20 25 minutes with Miranda Young, who's one of the overseers of the jail. We probably spent 20 25 minutes trying to debunk it. And we couldn't. Every time we would go to knock it off, it would just fall straight down.
Uh,
Or in and they said her and Chris the next morning probably spent another hour trying to debunk it, opening the downstairs entrance door, seeing if even though we know nobody came in or out of the building, but we're just like, well, let's just see. And
Right.
there was no way to figure out how that picture went flying like 4.5 feet across the hallway. And
That is some awesome evidence. I mean, that's the ones that like people search for. That don't
right.
that happen when you least expect it.
Hmm.
And then, like you said, like when y'all capture that, like you did, your mind go straight into that whole like, okay, how did this happen, or how do we debunk it? Like it's
Right.
like, what do you do? Because
Right. I mean, after I was done pissing myself, I'm like,
exactly, you're like,
I'm like, okay, how did this actually just happen? Let's try to figure this out before we just throw it out there. But like I
hold on.
said, we spent at least a good 20 minutes, and they spent at least a good hour the next morning, and we just couldn't figure it out. And hasn't happened since. Didn't happen, when we went back the second time. But they remembered me and Josh when we went back the second time. So they were saying our names during the SS method and everything. So
That's cool.
yeah, and
That that's a good validation you get.
yeah, and we kept getting the two same names. When we went back the second time, trying to figure out who, we kept getting the same male name and the same female name. And so I'm like, I don't know if maybe one of them caused this, because what happened to draw our attention to that hallway, we actually heard a female from the hallway say help, and then we open the door and that picture goes. So
Gotcha.
I'm like, well, maybe this female who's saying her name is who called us to the hallway, and this other
Right.
guy's who knocked it off. So it's just one of those things that I think we'll never be able to figure it out, but it's just one of those pieces that a lot of people just die to capture, and we got lucky. It's what happened.
That
So
is awesome.
so if people want to get a hold of you guys to come check out their house, or just to collab with you or anything, how can guys find you on social media?
You can find me on Facebook, Jason Fife. Craig Hoffner also too, on Facebook. You can find us at the Knoxville Paranormal Society on Facebook, and then you can find me on Instagram at jason.5.75.
All right. And so what's the main goal going forward? Just to continue helping people, trying to find answers? Like, what's your main goal going forward?
I think it's both. For us right now, more to have fun, and because we spent so many years chasing this, constantly. Um, Now it's kind of nice, and we're getting a little older, so it's I guess to spread the message and to help, especially teams.
Right.
Or if you're wanting to start a team, or if somebody's wanting to get into it, you know, find someone that's been in it 5 or 6 years, and see how they liked it and what they did or what went wrong, or was it the people they were with, or was it because there's a lot of that involved,
Right.
um, with making a team and trying to find out, because I hate this. Well, I'm just going to say it anyway. But right now in our paranormal community, it's kind of jacked up, really.
Mhm.
That I try to talk to teams everywhere, um, but I've even had teams here in Knoxville that, like, I'll hit them up and I'll be like, hey, y'all, you want to get together, maybe put on a paranormal picnic somewhere, have some food trucks, and get people in the community and stuff. I never get replies back from them.
Mm.
And I'm kind of that guy where I'm like, well, I get it, you're busy, you're doing whatever your stuff, but if you're out here promoting your stuff to do the paranormal,
Mhm.
then, and I can't get a hold of you, not saying I'm anybody, but I'm just saying, as another investigator, if
Mhm.
I can't get a hold of you, just to ask some questions or find out about your team, or if y'all want to go investigate somewhere,
Mhm.
and I don't get answers, then I know clients are out there trying to get answers.
Right.
And I'm kind of hopefully working towards the goal of getting stuff together to help people,
Mhm.
especially teams, um, because I talked to a client the other day, and, we're on the National Registry of Paranormal Teams. for America, and they said they called like 15 people and emailed 15 people off that list. Now I don't know whether that's true or not, but you just never know. But we were the only ones that answered.
Huh.
After they spent hours trying to find somebody.
Right.
And when they finally got a hold of us, there was nothing we could do because they're like 8 or 9 hours away.
Right.
Stuff like that. And that happens because it makes me feel bad when I can't help them. I can help them over the phone and stuff, but it's hard to help them, because sometimes you have that feeling when you really can help someone, but you're not able to.
Right.
And there's teams in the area, but they're not willing to do the work to help.
Right. And see that's where the paranormal community kind of gets a bad rap, because you do have those teams that's more or less out for themselves and don't want to help other teams, or they're just out there to get clicks and likes and views, and they're not really in it for the correct reasons. Like we'll put our stuff on YouTube and stuff, but it's not for clicks and likes. We just want to show people that, hey, this does exist, and how can you explain some of this stuff?
Yeah, it's sort of the education, And I've watched some of you guys' videos too, and it's like, even I've done this for so long, but I still learn new stuff all the time. So it's like educational. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, they did that, or
right?
Hey, what are they doing here, or whatever, But
right.
That's because I love what I do,
right?
And the people that are like me that love what they do, they have that same mindset. Like you guys,
right.
you're passionate about it, and and that's kind of what we need right now, I think, because it's getting bad out there, and I hate to say it, but it's just kind of been that way for a while.
Right.
It's like you said, it's more about the likes and this and that than it is the
and see, we like to, some of our longer videos, we like to actually show what actually happens during an investigation, because like you said earlier, a lot of people just base everything on the TV shows. And, so we'll put out, a 30, 35, 40-minute video, and there's not a whole lot happening that you would call exciting. And there'll be one or two people that'll comment, well, nothing happened for like 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, well, that's how it happens, I was like, if you really want to know what goes on, I was like, that's what happens. You could be sitting in a dark room for 8 hours and nothing happened. I was like, that's what we like to show people. And
exactly.
And I have to get on there and comment because somebody said that. I was like, well, nothing happened for like 25 minutes. I'm like, okay, well, this isn't Ghost Adventures. It's not going to be just banging off left and right.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah. So, but Jason, I really appreciated you coming on. Like I said, I know it was last minute, but I'm super glad you were available. And
Thank you.
And like I said, everybody go check these guys out and contact them if you need their help, if you're local, because they're one of these teams that want to come out and help people. So
local or not, if you're out in there somewhere and you just need consultation or whatever or help, you can reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to.
Right. So everybody, this is Jason Fife. I'm Damien from RKB Paranormal. This is Life Beyond 6 Feet. Jason, thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Everybody have a good night.
Thanks.